start with prayer. In the name of the Father, to the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. Good and gracious God, we give you thanks for this day. We ask you to send your Holy Spirit upon us in our conversation. Help us through the insights of St. Catherine of Siena and the gifts that the Lord gave to her, that we might be drawn ever closer to your Son, who is the bridge to eternal life. We ask this as we ask all things through Christ, our Lord, our bridge. Amen. Okay, so let's dive back into the
55.
Okay, yes, 56. All right.
56. 55 is very short. No, it isn't. 50. One of them was very short.
So is everybody at 56?
Yeah. Oh, it's 57.
Okay, so
I read ahead.
Oh, I have to. I did this a whole 2 months ago.
Oh, man.
All the way up there.
I don't think I remember that long.
okay, so she's summing up and she's saying that I've shown you how to walk. Okay, this is how to walk is to live. This is how you are to live your relationship with God. And she set it up with how we are to see that we all really kind of start in the river, right? And that we have to get out of the river. And how do we get out of the river? The 3 steps, right? And what are the 3 steps? Memory, right?
Memory, understanding, and will.
I nailed it.
And what she refers to the 3 steps really as reason, using our reason. So this is completely our natural powers, right? So that's how we get out of the river. And then we have to use all 3 of these. We have to use all 3 of these steps, and you can't have one step without the other. Okay? Remember how last we were talking about which came first, the chicken or the egg, right? So it's not linear. It's more kind of like maybe a circle, right? And so we can kind of we don't necessarily even begin with memory because she says there can't be anything in the memory unless the will's first been touched. And what does the memory do? The memory holds on, right? And so just the fact that you're here and you're thinking about these things, you're holding on to information, facts, knowledge, with what? Your memory. That's your memory. Because a lot of times we think about memory as remembering something clear in the past. No, memory is like what you're holding in your mind right now, right? And then I have the power to think about what's in my mind, consider what's in my mind. Are you with me here? Okay. So they're distinct, and the way that we use the word memory is really just events that have been stored in the closet, right? And they're somewhere back there, and then we can maybe bring them back out when we want to. So no, like that's why you talk about dementia, and the problem with that is like that a person who is suffering severely from dementia, right? Alzheimer's. My grandpa had Alzheimer's. The last years of his life is like they can't carry out any kind of conversation because they can't hold anything in their memory, right? In their mind right now. Although interestingly, sometimes they can recall things from the past or prayers they memorized, right? So, okay, so she's saying that okay, we have to be really intense about this as far as like maybe you might even say what's on your mind. What's on your mind is really memory. So that means if you're the evil spirit and you want to keep people in the river of basically living your life directed towards all of the pleasures of the world, right? And especially the more sensual pleasures around physical pleasure and possessions. So if you're the evil spirit and you're wanting to keep people in the water, what would you do? What would you do? Oh, what would you do?
Just keep throwing those things out.
Yeah, keep you want to like keep feeding their mind. So it's like, okay, so this is not to say it's like we're condemning modern communication, but like look at the way the modern communication is happening, especially like social media. So I look at social media several times a day, but I also know my dad, who's 79 years old. He'll just go scrolling through Facebook forever, right? I mean, like, who would have thought he can hardly, he can't type or anything, but like, so what does that do? What's the problem here? Is it keeps those things on your mind, right? And then it's those things that you're thinking about. And then guess what? When we get together, those are the things we're talking about, right? And getting impassioned about. So, of course, virtue is in the middle. So I'm just taking kind of extreme examples, but I want to highlight is like one of the most biggest things that the evil spirit can do is just keep us preoccupied with the banal, right? With just the ordinary and superficial pleasures of the world. And Cicero said that basically to control the masses, you just have to have circuses. I mean, entertainment and sports and pan bread, food and sports, kind of, right? And you think about like the amount of money and like the energy and it, like the problem isn't the sports, okay? That's not. The problem is it's like now it's all consuming. Like if you want to be a part, you're a fifth grader and you want to be on a team, like you're traveling on Sundays sometimes. I mean, for fifth graders, right? It's like, what? And so what does that mean? It's like, oh, I'm not rejecting God. No, you're not deliberately rejecting God. You're not making a choice, I choose to reject him. But that's not the only way that we lose our this vital bond with God. This is what the Catechism says. It's not just by like, I want to have nothing to do with God. That's not what these people are saying. That would lead you to lose your bond with God, right? The Catechism says there's two other ways that the vital bond can be lost by being forgotten or overlooked. I think there's a big difference in here as far as forgotten. Someone got upset with me. I mean, every day. Okay. Someone got upset with me a few weeks ago because I was making a distinction between Protestant theology and Catholic theology, and why bring those divisions in? Because those are not true. They're not true. That's not accurate. You're not understanding right. In my mind, I'm like, hello. Like, no, there are distinctions, and maybe I didn't. That wasn't because maybe it wasn't a good forum, and I wasn't meeting people where they're at. But we're so distant from the Protestant Reformation and all the things that happened in the 20th century. No one even remembers what the distinctions between Protestant theology and Catholic theology are, right? So it's been completely forgotten. Overlooked would be what? I would call that distracted, or what were you gonna say? Neglect, right? Leads you to being distracted. So according to the Catechism, it says that the vital bond can be lost. If that is true, okay, then it's not just me willing to reject God that can lead me to hell. It's actually forgetting or overlooking. Oh, there's no precedent of that in the Old Testament. No, it's constant. When the people would go into exile, like Babylonia, the Babylonian exile, it's because they had forgotten they soon forgot the wonderful works of the Lord. This is kind of like, but it makes completely sense if we're saved by love. Love is always, if you love, then whatever you love, that's what you're thinking about. I mean, that if you don't think about something very often, you love it very little. And in the end, we'll be judged, according to St. John of the Cross. This is quoted in the Catechism too. By what? Love. Love of God. Right? Okay, so just kind of getting back to here, and we're talking about this is how reason gets out of the swamp. And the reason that we stay out in the swamp, according to her, is because of our selfish self-love. That's an important term. Selfish self-love. What is she making a distinction here? Is she making a distinction? Selfish
Yeah.
self-love. Yeah, what is it, Angela?
Well, we need self-love.
Yeah.
Right, but selfish self-love is to think only of ourselves.
Yeah, it's immoderate, it's excessive, it's inordinate, it's not ordered right. And so love your neighbor as yourself.
Yeah.
So some people, so this is a vice too, if I don't have true self-love, but selfish self-love, and so basically that selfish self-love then is where my memory, understanding, and will live. What's in it for me? Right? What am I going to get out of this? And your good's not even on my mind, so it's not in my memory. But if I'm relating to you, it's because I want something. Oh, Father's calling. He was. Not far from the truth. Okay, so. Okay, everybody's clear here? And remember, she says, we've got to work at digging out this selfish self-love. She talks about using a knife. We'll get that into it in a different way. But this selfish self-love was not created or cultivated by us. I mean, it was not acquired by our work. It was built up by choices we've made, and we become more selfish, right? If you give a little, we talk about with little kids, you keep giving them everything they want, what happens? They turn it into a tyrant. I mean, really, right?
Yeah.
Because they don't have the use of reason, so the parents are cultivating this in them. And so it can be cultivated, selfishness can be cultivated, but original sin is basically a habit of the heart inclining us to be selfish. That's one way to say it on a real practical level. So anybody who says that they're not selfish is either a liar or lacks incredible self-awareness, I would say. Because the holiest people that I know, actually, who I would say that I don't see any selfishness in, they have an incredible sensitivity to oh no, I've got a long ways to go. It's kind of like the perfect, professional athletes. They if there's just one iota of something that's off, I mean, it's glaring for them, right? So, okay. So she says, now I'm going to show you, we're on paragraph 56, about 5 lines down. I will show you these in 3 stages. Okay, so we're climbing out the stairway, and now we're going on the road by living. And so that there is 3 degrees or stages of the soul. And the 3 stairs, so there's 3 stairs, 3 stages. Are they the same? Are the stages and the stairs the same? No, they're not. Remember, these are the stairs. These are the stairs. The stages, let's go to them. And this really, she's using a little bit different wording, but really she's talking ultimately about the 3 stages of the spiritual life. The purgative, the illuminative, the unitive, and beginners, proficients, perfect, right? So I don't know what they do with swimming lessons anymore. But when I was going through that, you had beginners, advanced beginners, intermediate, and then lifesavers, yeah, or something, yeah, like that. I quit when I was at advanced beginners. I talked about my dad had to. I was already perfect in my head. Okay. I hated swimming. So, okay. So that's what we say in the spiritual life, and this is what she's saying here. Okay. The first of these stages, the imperfect, then the more perfect, then the most perfect. Okay, the imperfect, the perfect, and the most perfect. Okay, so what it these individuals and most perfect. And all of these three have to do with the degree where you are, where you're rolling, you might say, where your flow is in your relationship with God. Okay? It doesn't mean that she says in here, it's not, there may be areas of your life where you're most perfect and areas where you're imperfect. She says that all three of them can exist in the same soul at the same time. That's helpful because a lot of times when you read like St. Teresa of Avila or St. John of the Cross, and they have the interior castle, you have all of these going into all of these rooms or these mansions, and which room am I in? Okay, well, I'm not in that room anymore. Or St. John of the Cross, the three ways, the purgative, the illuminative, the unitive, which stage am I in? Okay, so all of this applies to me, and none of this applies to me. Well, no, she's saying that all three of them can exist. So there's, in one area of my life, I'm a mess, right? In another area of my life, maybe it's just the life of prayer in itself, that there's a high level of virtue, of perfection. Okay, so she says that explicitly. There are three stages for which many have the capacity. These are their stages, and all three can be present in one and the same person. All three can be present in one and the same person. Okay. Here she gives, when she's talking about these, the imperfect, the perfect, and the most imperfect. What did she compare the first one to?
Mercenary.
Okay. The second is
Faithful servant.
faithful servant. Servant, right? The third is what? Child, right? Child, familial, right? You're a family member, right? And so the stages of the spiritual, these are the stages of the spiritual life. The stages of the spiritual life are determined by the behaviors, the actions that are characteristic, proper to each stage. So it's determined by the types of behaviors that are proper to each stage. So that means basically what type of if you're in this stage, what type of behaviors are you performing? What's the focus of your activities? What motivates you? So, what motivates a mercenary? What's that?
Reward.
Money, right? Does that person even care about the cause? Not only to the degree that he.
They could be on either side.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
person either side.
Right. So, do we actually start off like that in our spiritual lives?
Yes.
Absolutely. Nobody starts off perfect. Nobody starts off, so like, and it's not until the end of the gospel, John 15:15, that Jesus says, I no longer call you servants, but friends or family. So we start off as mercenary, and there's parts of our spiritual life that are mercenary right now. And so what does that mean then, if there's a part of your spiritual life that's mercenary?
You do it for what you're getting out of it.
Purely,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Pretty much purely.
Mhm.
And so sometimes I like to look at this I call it the stages of stewardship. And it's probably best reflected in stewardship as it relates to the school, but we have people that are at the mercenary stage, where basically it's like, they really have no, I mean, they don't, if it happens, it's okay. If they win, they lose, whatever. I mean, like, that'd be nice, as long as it doesn't affect what I want here. And I want my kids in this wonderful Catholic school, right? So I'm gonna practice stewardship at the level, only at the level that's absolutely required, right? And so I'm gonna do this to get my money, my goods, my cattle, in a certain sense, right? And so that helps to get people in the door to start practicing some good habits. There's a stage before, unfortunately, and this is what we're dealing with here, is that people who are not at the, like, say, if we talk about stewardship stages, people who are not even at the imperfect, and they're kind of like those, the wedding guests, were not properly clothed, you might say. So they get their kids into the school, right? All right, they get what they want, but they're not practicing doing anything in regards to living their stewardship. They're just sneaking around like a thief. No, I'm not kidding. Those people do not like me. They're liking me less. Yeah, these individuals, and it's never their fault. I'm not being sensitive about this, am I? There was one thing I was gonna say about this. This stage. It'll come to me. So anyway, the goal, like with stages, is to move people from one stage to the next, right? If you're talking about evangelization and working with other people, that means, like, you can't treat the mercenary like a servant, because it won't motivate them. What motivates a servant? Respect. Yeah. A good servant.
Kindness.
Kindness would be a characteristic of us.
Well, the desire to please the master.
Please the
A
master.
good cause you see that's beneficial,
What?
like something I wanna be a part of.
Yeah. So, like, a good servant, would you see that as a positive thing? Yeah, right? Is the good servant, like, if he has a servant's heart, she has a servant's heart, what does that mean?
Trying to please.
What?
He loves him.
He loves him, right? And so, is the mercenary, so, like, if I'm talking about a person at this stage, do they really, what's in their memory, what they're thinking about, what they're occupied with? Is it the money? Is it the booty? No. Right? And so this makes sense, doesn't it? It's like, if you don't know where you're at here, you can't motivate other people or yourself towards advancing and growing. So it's like with the mercenary, like, what's in it? If I start off, what's in it for me? This is why, like, in a certain way, stewardship can be so powerful, because it can bring people along in their relationship with God, because you're practicing behaviors that pertain to living in relationship with God. And so the goal is, like, after practicing in a while, I experience the freedom. Remember, the second stage is the free. I experience, like, my life is better in a sense of, like, I'm enjoying this, and they begin to be concerned less about what they're getting. This is a good way of life. That's what we call it, the stewardship way of life, right? And so, okay, so we get to this point, and we can think that we've arrived, but we haven't arrived, because most perfect is out of what? And what kind of love? It's filial love, so that would be love of God. Yeah. So we're talking about what you're preoccupied with is what pleases God. That doesn't mean that, okay, I don't really care about serving you. I just know I want to serve you. I don't love you, but I know that it pleases God, so. No, because the natural and the supernatural are not in competition or conflict. This is the beautiful thing, so that the natural and the supernatural can coexist. So you can have, that means that at the natural level, at the human level of like life, the flourishing of natural life, say friendships, right? Or even talk about wealth. None of those things in themselves are in competition with God, love of God. So it's like, oh, if I love God, then no, we can't be friends, or I can't have money, or so anything that would build up and lead to human flourishing. I can't have meaningful work, can't do anything I enjoy, right? I can't have any pleasure, no? So God made all of those things, right? And so what we believe and what we say is that they only are problematic when they are contrary to our ultimate happiness, our ultimate good of happiness in God. That means we're making these things our gods. They become, remember last week we were talking about our idols. We become attached and consumed. Like it's what preoccupies our time and our thoughts. So if we're not thinking very much about God or living well, living rightly, so it's not magic, like spiritual life is not magic and in some other world, like it's here right now. That I can have a sense or maybe a rough estimate of where I am in my relationship with God. Am I striving? Am I investing? Okay, that tells me where my heart is. And this, my dad's one of his favorite sayings was like, people do what they want to do.
Here we talk about money, could this also be true like in prayer? Like for instance, if I have no prayer life, and all of a sudden I got an illness or something, I pray to the Lord, please heal me. That's kind of like the imperfect.
Yeah.
But then maybe the perfect would be more, okay, I'm a little more committed, I do my daily prayers, because I know this is serving God.
Yeah.
And then I can move to the next level, which would be I'm doing it because I love God, I want to be in union with Him.
Yeah.
Like I'm saying these prayers because.
Yeah, so how do like, how do each of these individuals, okay, if these stages of the spiritual life are defined by the behaviors and the actions, the activities that are proper to each stage, when this person experiences suffering in prayer, how does that work?
Stop praying.
Why? Why would they stop? Why would this group stop praying?
Because they're not getting anything.
They're
out
not
of
getting
it.
paid, there's no booty, right? Well, that's what they used to call it, okay. We'll stop there. Right, and so like, what's interesting is like a lot of times with evangelization, a person who goes on a retreat, so Father Seth's on the Kairos retreats this weekend, right? So these kids are having some really profound experiences of God, a number of them are. Think about our Acts retreats. People have profound experiences of God, and so they're lit up in the sense of like they're full and they never experienced spiritual delight before like this. The problem, and I don't know, like what we're gonna have to address is like, the problem is like, that doesn't make you into the perfect stage. You're probably here, and you might advance further because you've been striving to live faithful for many years and you can move through, but like, if I'm experiencing this delight and a powerful encounter, I'm like Peter, I want to let's build some cabins here, right? And stay on this hill. No, the next place that they go is to the cross, the passion, right? So basically, the purpose of the powerful consolation, amazing consolation, was to give them energy and spirit that they need to trek the path. So that's why I would say it's like, okay, like, and we've all, I know I've been at that for sure for many years, and there's still parts of my spiritual life where I'm at this stage. It's like, that, well, probably not too many at this stage, but there's thoughts for sure of like, just, this isn't doing any good, just will quit. That's mercenary mentality. There are parts of my heart that are not completely converted, right? And so, now this one gets a bad rap, often, because this is where a good servant is what? Dutiful, right? And so, I know, and I've been the one that's kind of been poo-pooing this. That's like duty-driven spiritual life, duty-driven stewardship. And the reason I've done that is it's exaggeration for effect. I don't know if you never know us, I haven't exaggerated anything. Okay, but it's because we've been kind of living, if you spend too long just focusing on the duties, that becomes the entire reality. And after decades of this, I forgot what the whole purpose of it was. And it was a journey, right? So that's why I would be talking about, but in itself, no, like the servant is dutiful, right? And actually there's a lot of freedom and joy in, if you're living duty in your relationship with God. You have God and the good here, you have it in perspective. It's not just you're preoccupied with what you have to do, right? That's what the duty driven is. But no, I like to think about the spirit of the greatest generation when it came to our world wars, and the energy and passion that they had for like fighting for their country, right? And God, family, country, right? And so it's like they were happy and joyful about that, and so it's not just about what you're happy and joyful about. Okay, so there's natural satisfaction. It's also what you become sad about. If some of those guys that were not accepted committed suicide, because it was it's humiliating and like for themselves, right? Where do you think we are now as a country? Here or back here?
Back there.
Back
Yeah.
there.
So now it's actually a vice, if you're, even saying the word your patriotism, that's like a bad word now, right? Okay, there might be some issues around that. Like if we just take a logical look into this. But it's the same thing when we're talking about the spiritual life. I mean, like it's analogous to the spiritual life. Do you want to know what what are the specific specific practical behaviors of those who are beginners or in the imperfect or who are mercenaries? Avoiding sin, and resisting sinful inclinations or concupiscences, desires, strong desire, inordinate desires. Avoiding, so this is really the beginning of the spiritual life. So if I come up on a retreat, if I actually understand the roadmap, of how I'm going, my goal is going to be avoiding sin and resisting sinful inclinations, because my habit, I had this powerful experience of God, but I'm not converted. I still have all of the habits I had before. Right? That's like the saying they told us in seminary. As a seminarian, as a priest, your ordination day is amazing, right? And so I had all these bad habits, didn't pray my liturgy hours. I'm giving an example, not mine. Right? And I'm not on time for anything. I'm still not on time for anything. And I'm ordained, so wow. And the whole community bows in veneration. And now I'm a priest, and so I'm perfect. I'm perfect aligned in all of my commitments. No, it's like, And what do we mean by sin? Sin literally means in the Old Testament missing the mark. So it's like I'm missing the mark in my relationship with the things of this world, right? I'm making too much or too little of these things, all of these different goods, right? Work is a good thing. So what would this example? Missing the mark, would this be a sin? That I live for work. Is that missing the mark? It's missing the mark, right? Because it's not according to God's plan, right? And then what are sinful inclinations? So avoiding sin, that would be the actions, thought, word, and deed. But what's the resisting sinful inclinations? Temptations, right? Cravings for one thing or another. So I have, so if I don't have the habit of making holy the Lord's Day, then, and I have a powerful experience on a retreat, the glow and the afterglow, the afterglow of the retreat's gone in a month. And what, so what am I going to be experiencing? And so that glow and that heat was what was projecting me. And that heat's gone in a month. My cravings for for staying in bed and just doing nothing all day on Sunday. Okay, that's an inclination. That's craving, that movement. It's strong. Are you with me here? Okay. So does that mean that these are the only activities? No. That these are like the big rocks of this stage. Okay. What is in the second stage, which is the proficient, or she says what?
More perfect.
More perfect, or is it perfect?
More perfect.
More perfect?
More perfect.
More perfect. Okay, so the primary behaviors, the big rocks. Okay, you have big rocks and little rocks and pebbles and sand, and you want to get it all into the jar. What are the big rocks of each stage? That doesn't mean that there's not other smaller rocks or other things that go into it. But like at this stage, growing in good habits is like almost like it's kind of the sand. It's like you can't grow in good habits unless you've overcome bad habits. So for the more perfect, the primary activities, the behaviors, what one is to be preoccupied with is actions pertaining to virtue. Thought, word, or deed. So, like, okay, I encourage everyone to kind of choose a virtue for the year. So I don't know if you did that. So I chose meekness. So meekness falls under temperance, the cardinal virtue of temperance. And meekness has to do with the moderating of the desire, the combative desire, which is in all of us, and it's a good thing. We have to have that. It's where fortitude lives, right? And so to overcome difficulties, basically. To overcome difficulties, that spirit. Okay, so meekness, it moderates it because that spirit can be weak or too strong. Weak is that I like cave for everything, right? And too strong is I want to fight everything, right? Does that make sense? Okay, so meekness moderates it, particularly in the too much aspect. Okay, so if I want to grow if I'm in this stage, I'm focusing on growing in the virtue of meekness. So I'm practicing acts pertaining to meekness, to growing in that virtue, so that when it becomes a virtue, the muscle in the soul, okay, the desire that's natural to standing up to overcoming obstacles, you're able to perform and execute in a way that's easy, joyful, and prompt, in the right way. Like, that takes a lot of experiences and practices, but you can just like, you look forward to it, not to excessive, in an excessive way, but to the right amount. So I would be thinking, in the practical level, I would maybe think about situations that that lead to quick impulses towards like being combative, right? And so this would be, okay, I'm going to resist that impulse, right? I can use my reason to do that. Does it feel pleasant? No, right? And do I want to do it? No, because I don't have virtue. I don't have the virtue yet, but I'm performing actions that pertain to virtue. Does that mean that this group, when you're in this area, you don't worry about sin anymore? No, there's two actions, two activities, two big rocks for those who are in the perfect stage. Activities pertaining to virtue, growing in virtues, and guarding from sin. So this is different than avoiding sin. Avoiding sin is like you're more in the stream of like sinning, and like this is your practice, right? Overeating is my practice. Okay, I've got to avoid that. Now once the kind of the war is over, I still have to leave troops to guard, okay, to ensure, because things could go back to the way they were. Does that make sense? And remember, and I think it's good, we just start off with clear, like black and white distinctions between the stages. Then once we kind of grasp that, then we can kind of go into the nuances of, well, there's areas of my life where I'm here and where I'm here, okay? Now the most perfect stage. All of these are stages of the virtue of charity, love of God, where you are at in your relationship and love of God. So the first thing that you have to have is not to perform actions that are contrary to, that are not loving. Okay, that's the first stage. Then I perform actions that are like directed in the right directions, building good habits through lots of practice over a long period of time, with lots of effort. And now, like, this becomes kind of a way of life. But that has to do with what? Doing and willing what God wills and does. Are you with me here? Okay, so that's not the perfect stage, though. The perfect stage is most perfect, right?
Right.
The most perfect stage is actions or behaviors directed to dwelling with God and experiencing fruition or enjoyment in Him. I noticed this with a lot of like older couples who have had good marriages, 50 years, and they're just with each other all the time. Like, that is their inclination. It's almost like their identity. They want to dwell together. I think about my grandmother and grandfather after 50 years of marriage, and like often in the evenings, just seeing them sitting on the swing, just sitting together, all their meals together. Like, they just want to dwell together. Dwelling is a home. Their home is not their home. Their home is the relationship, right? And so it's not just dwelling together, but like they experience enjoyment, their fruition, delight in dwelling together. Does that make sense? So they don't. So I can remember with my grandparents of like being with them, and we would go to the fair, or it's like they didn't really talk too much back and forth, but like they were happy where they were at dwelling with each other. So this is what friendship does too, isn't it? Like, just like even like middle schoolers or high schoolers, they want to spend time with their friends. They tell their parents, right? And what are you guys gonna do? They don't really have a clue. They just want to hang out, right? Dwell, and they enjoy that, right? So that's at the natural level. The greatest of natural happiness is friendship, natural friendship. At the supernatural level, when we talk about charity, which is love of God, so love of another person, that's natural friendship. Divine friendship is love of God, and what is it? What's the inclinations of this person? So in the beginning stages, the inclination is what? Is like, I'm trying to overcome my cravings, right? Now the craving is just to be with God. And I'm upset because I had so many duties and responsibilities, which I know God wanted me to do, that I didn't get to spend time with God in prayer. Not because I failed as it was a servant, it's because I didn't get my duty in. It's because I just missed being with him, right? Yeah.
Would somebody at this stage live thinking God is a member of our family?
What leads you to, where does that come from?
Comes from my own childhood, because I've always felt that God was a member of our family. When I grew up in a monastery, but it was a noisy one.
Yeah.
But God was a member of our family.
Yeah.
I mean, he existed every day
Yeah.
in everything because of my parents.
Yeah.
So I just thought of that when you're saying that. I mean, not that my family was perfect, not
Right,
not by any means.
There were still some areas up here. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think you don't even notice the distinction between a second level and the third level. Because I can remember like when years and years ago, one little book goes with liturgy hours, just a daytime prayer, then mid-morning, afternoon and afternoon. And I started doing it at work. I remember I did it for a month. I remember saying to myself, like, George, what are you doing this? This is stupid. I'm getting nothing out of this.
Yeah.
But I forced myself to keep doing it. I did like for 6 months, or
Yeah.
like it's almost a year after. I had to go to a meeting one time where it was like, it was face to face all day. I couldn't break away to do these little prayers. I missed it so much. It became such a part of my heart. Because I didn't even know that. But it's kind of like, first part was just the first stage. The second part was the duty.
Yeah.
Like I just kept doing it even though I felt like I'm getting nothing out of this. But it's amazing how I transitioned to that third part where it became such a part of me.
Yeah, it became a part of you. Yeah, became a part of the family. Let's kind of end with this. There's a story of that goes back some time. It doesn't happen anymore, but that shepherds who would in the Middle East who would have a sheep who would be just unruly and just go on wherever, put itself in danger. The shepherd would break one of its legs. Okay, which would force the sheep to, basically convalescence, heal, but spend a lot of time with the shepherd, right? Always around. And so afterwards, then the sheep never left the shepherd's side because it enjoyed just being with the shepherd. Yeah. Okay.
Tough love.
What's that? That is. If you go on this last stage here, of perfect, if you, Psalm 27 captures this very well. Psalm 27 verse 4. Pull it up here. One thing I ask of the Lord, this I seek, to dwell in the Lord's house all the days of my life, to delight in the Lord's beauty, to dwell in the house of the Lord. One thing I seek. Psalm 27 verse 4, one thing I seek. Okay, this is David, to dwell in the house of the Lord, taking delight, experiencing joy, savoring his goodness. All right, glory be to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit.
As it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be, world without end. Amen.
Oh, so we'll meet again, not on Holy Saturday, but the Saturday afterwards.
Okay.
Cool.
What?
We'll just continue on, so that was 50, what was that?
What did you just say?
We would not meet next week, but the week after, and then we'll continue on, and we would be in, where was I pulling from there? Mostly 56, or,
57 is super short.
yeah, that wasn't it. Yeah, so 57, 57 is just short, we'll talk about slavish fear. 57, 58, 59. Okay.